The world, as we discussed, was not created perfect. Man was not created perfect. There had to be created a context of evil, because otherwise man would have no choice. We had quoted the Gemara that after 6,000 years, this existence comes to an end. Initially, God created the Garden of Eden, and there was a tree of knowledge, good and evil. The good and evil was the first context of choice. Adam had a choice, not to eat of the tree of knowledge or to eat of the tree of knowledge. If he wouldn't have had that reality, choice would have no relevance to him. So God created that fruit of good and evil. That was the context of his choice. He failed. By failing, not only did he not perfect the world, he introduced a new evil into the world, which the potential of the world that it was able to achieve was no longer able to be achieved in that context. If he wouldn't have eaten of the tree of knowledge, he would have immediately risen to a level of perfection within himself and the whole world. But even then, as we'll explain in a moment, that world couldn't continue to be part of eternity. Why? Because eternity means you have a relation with God. The only thing that can have a relation with God is only something that has no deficiency. As God is perfect, whatever exists in that eternity has to reflect that perfection of God. So even though the original creation, even if it would have been putrefied by Adam, by eating of the tree of knowledge, but it was created initially in a context that it was subject to what? To permanent deficiency. Because evil had to be there, because that was the setting, that was the playing field for man to make choice. And without evil existing in that setting, there is no choice. As a result of that, the world initially could have never been more than 6,000 years. Even if Adam would have putrefied the world. Because the world that is eternal is the world that's created perfect. The world that was created that it could actually have deficiency on a permanent level, as was the result of Adam's eating of the tree of knowledge, that world has no relevance to eternity. Because it has the capacity to be impacted by impurity. What's the future? That's perfect. That's eternal forever. Therefore, the human being in the world that was created initially had a capacity to fail to the nth degree, had a capacity to ascend to the nth degree due to choice. But nevertheless, but within the framework and the infrastructure of that existence had relevance to be impacted by evil, which means ultimate level of deficiency. That world doesn't belong in a context of eternity where everything there is perfect. So what happens after 6,000 years? The world comes to an end. The world that God will create, what's that world? That world is not a world of challenge. That world is a world, in the 8,000th year, is whoever succeeded in this world, the present world we live now, that world, he's meant to reap all the good that he's accomplished. So that world is created not to have deficiency, but to address the spiritual accomplishments of people who met the grade to be worthy as being part of eternity. So that world, and it says in the Pasuk, the Navi says, I will create Shamayim Chadoshim, a new heaven, a new earth. It's a new creation. Because that new creation has no relevance to what? To failing. It doesn't have a capacity to deficiency. But this world, which is a world of choice, it always has to be geared and created to be able to meet all the challenges, the ups and the downs, the peaks and the valleys. A world peaks and valleys means has relevance to what? To lack of perfection. The world to come, which we're talking about, the recreated world, that's a world only to reap reward. To reap reward, there's no reason it should be deficient. It's created perfectly for man to be part of that world, to be a beneficiary of all that he accomplished in this existence, which we're speaking right now. We have the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments, many of them, we're talking about are very serious dictates. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery, incest, less from God, idolatry. This is very extreme transgressions. The carry capital punishment. Not to swear falsely in the name of God, not to bear false witness. Observance of the Shabbos. Now, the 10 Commandments was said to who? To every one of the Jews that stood at Sinai. Could you imagine? You have a holy rabbi, something that's with our understanding what a holy rabbi is, the Chofetz Chaim. Say, Chofetz Chaim, I don't want you to commit adultery. I don't want you to commit incest. I don't want you to murder. I don't want you to do idolatry. I don't want you to blaspheme God. See, the Chofetz Chaim thinks himself. Does God know who he's talking to? Would I consider for a moment to do any of those things? You talk to the guy down the street. Seems to be, it's a misplaced communication here. You have to tell me how to upgrade, not to be concerned that I may go off the cliff. But yet the 10 Commandments were said to every Jew, despite the fact that he saw the 10 plagues, he saw the splitting of the sea. It was said to Moshe Rabbeinu, it was said to Aaron and his children. These are the most special Jews who lived in the history of the world. Why was it said to every one of them? You only have a negative commandment because the world itself is geared for that eventuality of failing, because that's the context of choice. That's the context of choice. So every one of the negative commandments, don'ts, say, me, I'm such a holy man. Do I have any relevance to the don'ts? Don't eat non-kosher meat. You have to tell the Chofetz Chaim not to eat non-kosher meat. Don't eat a limb off a living animal or any of these things. The answer is, you being part of this deficient existence, you have that capacity to fail to that degree. And because you have the capacity to fail that degree, you have to understand what the range of choices, because you go so much to the negative, therefore the upside has so much greater value. I could have gone off the cliff. I chose not only not to go off the cliff, I chose to climb to the top of Mount Everest. I could have gone into the depths of abyss. Instead of going into the abyss, I went into the pinnacle of holiness. The Jews could have remained in Egypt. All of them. And they would have never gotten out. 20% had faith going into an unplanted desert. We have faith in God. But they had choice. They could have stayed behind. They didn't have to go out. That was a prerequisite to go out. Do you have sufficient belief in God that even if you're in an unplanted desert, the word of God, that's life. And as long as you have his guarantee, you don't have to have anything up front. And that was that 20%. The other 80%, they didn't have sufficient belief or faith. They perished in Egypt. They never left Egypt. But every one of the 20% who left, they could have stayed also. They had a choice. That means in terms of the makeup, they had relevance to make that choice. If you had relevance to make that choice, that means something you already have a defective gene. Because if you don't have that defective gene, you can't make the choice to do the wrong thing. I'll give you an example. A person has healthy genes. Healthy gene pool. Could he have an epileptic fit? There's no relevance to epilepsy. Or to other genetic diseases. Doesn't have it. Because his gene pool are healthy. The gene pool of every human being, we have genes which are actually defective genes. And you got to swim up, you have to go upstream. You're fighting against your demons. Every one of us at a certain level, including the Chofetz Chaim, including all the Jews that stood at Sinai. Because everything in life is choice. And if I wouldn't have choice, there's no point to exist. At the end of time, when the world would reach its level of purpose, the time of choice has come to an end. Now we talk about reaping. Reaping what you've accomplished. Reaping what you've accomplished, now God gives you absolute clarity because there's no reason any longer to have a context of choice. But up to 6,000 years, what is that existence? That existence is part of that original existence. The 6,000 years that the playing field was a playing field of choice. That means that's deficient. That has a capacity to deal with evil. That has no relevance to eternity. Because whatever relevance to eternity, it has to reflect God's perfection. So the new world God will create at the end of time is purely a setting to receive your reward. It's a setting of shleimus. Those who achieve perfection, that's the place to be. And there's nothing in that setting which reflects anything negative, and therefore it doesn't belong within God's proximity. That's the understanding. Give you an example of this thing called jury duty. If a person was a felon, although he's rehabilitated, spent 25 years in Alcatraz in Sing Sing, in Dannemora, used to be such a prison, I don't know where it is. He's rehabilitated. They won't let him get on a jury. Why? Because you never know. When he was that criminal, although they say he's rehabilitated, the psychiatrist evaluated him, the social worker, the therapist, the this, the that. There's no way he could go back. You know something? There may be something microscopic. There's some deficiency in him because otherwise he couldn't have done what he did in the past. Therefore, he's not eligible to sit on the jury. He doesn't have enough balance to make an evaluation what is and what's not. He leans towards, he has a certain inborn handicap that he leans towards that. Therefore, he can't appreciate to give that man full justice. Of course, he was there. We all have relevance to being there. Because if we don't have relevance to being there, there's no challenge. Now, there's certain profiles, psychological profiles, that people have predilections to be criminals. It's up to you. The Gemara tells us at the end of Shabbos that based on what kind of star you're born under, that's your predilection. So there was one woman, she gave birth to a son, and he was destined to be one of the greatest Torah sages, time of the Talmud. And she goes to an astrologer, a stargazer, a non-Jew, says, your son is born under the star, he's going to be a thief, that he can't control his behavior. No way. So she went So when the child's born, you're not worried the child's going to be a thief, but maybe you could somehow nip it in the bud that he shouldn't have developed into this career criminal. So they went to the rabbis, the woman, and she said, what am I supposed to do? My son was born under the star. He's going to be that criminal. So he said, just make sure he always has his head covered. If he has his head covered, that will cause him to have a sense of God's presence. He won't steal. And he already developed him to be one of the leading Torah sages. He's sitting and he's immersed in some kind of passage in the Talmud. And he's sitting under somebody else's tree, palm tree. Accidentally, as he's immersed in learning, his head covering falls off. Immediately, the moment his head covering falls off, he's already snatching fruit off the tree. It's not his tree. Because he has this predilection of theft, if he doesn't have something to control it, which is the head covering, which gives us a sense of God's presence, which creates that reverence, he becomes that. So what does that mean? That means this person, could he be part of eternity? Well, as long as you have the lid on the powder keg, it doesn't explode. But the moment you ignite it, it's all over. That person, he should be part of God's eternity. When he has such a deficiency, he has such a handicap, it's not acceptable. The whole world is that. Every one of us has the ability to make choices, only because we can make that choice, if we choose to make that choice. Therefore, it's inappropriate that this existence should be part of the future existence. Because the future existence means God is fully involved with every aspect of that existence. But if it has relevance to that deficiency, which represents evil and has a capacity of evil, it's inappropriate that existence should exist together with God as part of eternity. Therefore, after 6,000 years, the world is fallow, and then God destroys it, ceases to will its existence. He wills a new existence, new heavens, new earth, which does not have a capacity for failure. Why? Because the objective of that new existence is not to challenge, but rather that's the location to receive your reward. So these people achieve that perfection. That world is eternal. Because that was never meant to have deficiency for the sake of challenge. That's the understanding. The Rambam rules, there's such a thing as known as the righteous Gentile. Righteous Gentile. Righteous Gentile, we call him Chasidi Umas Olam, have a share in the world to come. The righteous Gentile. Not because he was chosen by God. The chosen nation, only the Jewish people. The Jewish people are the only ones that have a direct relation with God. So how does the righteous Gentile, how does he somehow enter into that realm of acceptability? The answer is he comes in on the coattails of the Jew. He's part of, that's how he's coming in. He's not coming in because he has a relation with God. It's because he has a semblance of what the Jew is, because he abides by the 7 Noahide laws, which were given at Sinai. As a result of that, he has relevance to the Jewish people, so he comes in on the coattails of the Jew. Okay? Now, the Rambam says something very interesting. What about if you have a non-Jew observing the 7 Noahide laws because he believes to be an ethical, moral human being? That's the only way to live. Not to steal, not to cheat, not to lie, not to swear falsely, not to murder, not commit incest, not to eat like a barbarian, cut off a limb of a living animal to eat its limb. And he lives this way because he feels he wants to live a life of purity. And according to his understanding of purity and wholesomeness, this is the way to go. So he's observing the 7 Noahide laws. But he still has no share in the world to come. The only time he has a share in the world to come is he must observe the 7 Noahide laws because it was given at Sinai by God as part of the Torah that the Gentile must live within the context of 7 Noahide laws. If he observes them with that intent, because they're divine, it's not because he feels that it's the right thing, it's the moral and ethical way to live, but rather it's due to God's willing it at Sinai, then he has a share in the world to come. Now, the Rambam rules, let's say you have a Jew, and he accepts the Torah's entirety. Not because it was given at Sinai, because he believes he's been through the thick and thin of theology, and he's come to the conclusion there's only one monotheistic God, nothing else. And as a result of that, he accepts the whole gamut of dictates, how to behave, because he feels that's the way to live. But it's unrelated to God. Rambam says he's in violation of a negative commandment called Lo Sivnu Ela Elilin. You cannot turn towards idolatry. He says like this: if a person believes in God because it's immutable from Sinai, regardless of your intellect and all your considerations differently, you're rooted in truth. And you're not going to veer from that truth. Although you may have questions, but the answer to the question is, this is the truth. Because we know the truth. I have to maybe answer the question, but we know the truth. But if the truth is based on his own understanding, he says, since man's intellect and mind is finite, and we vacillate continuously, so that belief is not a firm belief. Because today you believe this, tomorrow you believe something else. You can be devout today, and tomorrow, for whatever reason, you may see it differently. But if it's rooted in the truth, you never see it differently. You may feel more secure, less secure regarding that belief, but it's one thing. The Noahide, he only has a share in the world to come if it's rooted in fact, in truth, like the Jew. So if it was given at Sinai and that's his reality, so why does he observe the 7 Noahide laws? Because God says I must. It's not because I believe such. If it's you believe, you're a deficient person. For that to generate an energy which gives you relevance to eternity, it has to be truth. Immutable truth. The only immutable truth we have is Sinai. There's no other immutable truth. So therefore, we have no share to the world to come. Because that truth is not a fixed truth. It's a truth which vacillates. Today this, today that. Every day there's a modification of what that is. Therefore, it's not acceptable. But he's living that pure life, the perfect life. But it has no relevance to the absolute, which is irrefutable, which is immutable, which is the truth. It's connected to Sinai, that's irrefutable truth. It's because I've come upon that truth and I'm impressed, but that's not something which is genuine and authentic to be at a level that's immutable. Therefore, there's no share in the world to come.